We're going looking at 3 different replays at 3 different MMRs of people playing Sven. This first one is Herald 2, then we'll be looking at an ancient player, and then finally an immortal, high rank immortal player. So first off here we have Sven pretty much doing a tri-lane up against this Ursa, and Ursa almost dies there. We get a Sunstrike out, and pretty much they just start the lane here and spam all their spells onto Ursa. And this is not necessarily a good way to get kills, because when the creep wave is pushed in towards your tower, it's very hard to end up killing the enemy. And pretty much the Ursa just gets the last hit under his own tower, which does make it kind of hard, but the Sven has pretty terrible last hitting, because if we look at his starting items, he bought 6 tangos and the mango. The real big issue with this is that if he just bought a quelling blade, it would make him much easier to last hit. And here's a great example of it. See these 3 creeps? He has currently 3 last hits, and watch how he misses every single one of them. This is something that, you know, quelling blade would help fix, but also doing some last hit practice for a little while would make a huge difference in your ability to farm in lane, especially when it's uncontested. So now we have Lena, which is the position 4 hero, ends up coming here, and really she's doing the same thing again, just spamming her spells onto the enemy, particularly her first spell, and she does some right clicks or whatever, and the towers end up pushing down towards their tower now, and you end up seeing the creep equilibrium really just isn't a thing. And really the disruptor comes very good rotation here. The Ursa doesn't know whether to fight or to come back and run or whatever. And Alina also ends up getting caught. The Sven doesn't know what Glimpse does. It was like, where did Lena go? I have 3 heroes to spam spells on. Disruptor's level 5. Like, is this a mid hero? Almost. The guy is way ahead on level, and this shows you how just simple rotations like this, like good support, can actually like gain MMR as well. And this tri-lane is actually working. Like, who would have thought that, you know, legend players can't even do tri-lanes, but, you know, Hurl players next level tri-lane to the max. Maybe this is the way to gain MMR in this bracket. But what's really gonna suffer later on, which is very evident here, is the fact that he doesn't have points maxed up into cleave, which generally you want to cleave for farming faster, and it looks like he's going Echo Saber Rush. No stat items or anything. Generally the reason why you want cleave is that it's very good at harassing against a melee hero in lane like Ursa, as well as that then once the laning stage is over, you can rotate back into the jungle and farm way faster. Seeing Sven is actually hit number 1 on the total number of last hits in the game, and he's pushing objectives really far. At this point, he really wants to be rotating back into the jungle rather than waiting for the next creep wave to spawn each time. Now Monkey King decides to jump down on Sven, and he actually goes to turn back onto the monkey, and this was actually a smart idea because Crystal Maiden is nearby, but he doesn't fully commit to it, and there's a rotation in from a Weaver who has like 10 health. He almost died. Oh, if CM just had a higher level on her first spell. What level is it? Oh, only level 1. Like, that Weaver was dead. Oh, and Sven just gets to kind of push his tower, and he is like making some pressure on the map, but like players at this bracket are not really that interested in doing proper rotations to try and calculate to kill Sven. And really what he wants to be doing at this point should be trying to maximize his farm, and, you know, killing these neutral camps is really the way to go, and killing the tier 2, it just takes too long when you just don't have that much damage, especially when you're just here by yourself. You end up seeing something weird going on here. This guy killing Miracle. Come on, Miracle, you can do it. Miracle Invoker. Oh yes, Miracle Invoker gets out. I love how people have like Miracle Invoker coming for his Sunstrike. Oh yes. Oh, he did it. Oh yes. PogChamp, Miracle Smurf Lord. This is a Miracle Smurf, guys, in Herald. We caught him. We got him. So Sven going onto Shaman here. He ends up just ulting. He gets stuck in Shaman's ult. Is he gonna get out? Oh, just enough armor. He's like 20 HP and gets out. But this Sven has balls. He's going back in. Giant balls. Must be balls of steel. He said, oh, Miracle told me everyone in Immortal plays on low health. We gotta go back in. The Ursa gets caught. He times the tier 3. Getting the kill here. Got an assist, and he's farming in front of the tier 3. He's got to back out now. He's manned up enough here. And he's got his Mask of Madness, but how does he activate him? He's not using it here. He dives to go for Lena, then uses Mask of Madness. Okay, he ends up killing the Lena and dies straight after. So, these are not like the most smartest trades, but he's playing ballsy, and I like it. Okay, he's pushing this tier 2 still, like, what is it? Like, he's nearly 10 minutes taking this tower. You see how long it ends up taking by just trying to right-click it? It's insanely long. So this is why you probably want to just wait till later until you're much stronger, your team are all together to hit the tower at the same time. High ground push, and they actually have the siege creep, which is pretty smart, and they're going with this. And Monkey King he gets shackled by Shaman, but this doesn't turn out very well, as you might expect if anyone knows what goes on with like early pushes like this. You need to be much stronger, and you need to be controlling the map a lot better, and I think it's too early to go for that one, especially with the fact that players can just teleport into the outpost in behind you, and you haven't taken the outpost yet. So it's quite a dangerous position to be in for the whole team, and this is really like one of the reasons why they lose this fight. So first time, 20 minutes into the game, he decides to hit Ancients. So Sven farms a little bit here, and he finishes up his BKB. You see, it's really inefficient, like how he's farming. He doesn't know what camp or where to farm next. This is something that you definitely want to work on, his farming patterns. As well as that, he ends up having no buyback. He died 2 times prior to this with no buyback, so he hasn't had very good progression in the past like 3 or 4 minutes. Enemy take Roshan, he walks right past the Rosh pit. I don't think he realizes how dangerous that is, but soon after this he just goes here and Monkey King jumps down. He does stun the Monkey King, but the swarm from Weaver comes in, gives him negative armor, as well as that Monkey King is bashing him at this point, and pretty much the Sven ends up dying, and he has 90 seconds and dead, and it looks like Juggernaut here is just going to die to a shackle straight after. So this is the sort of stuff of where Sven needs to be much bigger than he actually is. He's only 14k net worth. It's coming close to 40 minutes now. So this is where you need to build into something bigger and better for the later parts of the game, and if you build the wrong items after the laning stage or the wrong skill build, you won't get that much bigger, and it really negates a lot of the advantage that you get out of the early laning stage. Now we're looking at a legend 3 Sven. He checks the other lane to see what's happening on with the bounty runes here. He's going for his own bounty rune here, and he ends up getting hooked by Pudge. He just stuns the Pudge and goes and picks up the other bounty rune. Pretty nice play, and he goes and teleports back to the lane. So this is pretty standard enough what you would end up seeing in Legend. Nothing too special, nothing, it's definitely above what Herald is doing. Now teleporting back to lane means you can last hit and not miss your last hits. However, the issue is that he ends up missing a lot of last hits. He's currently 1 last hit, and now he misses all the rest. He either gets denied or hooked by Pudge. And the same thing happens in the next creep wave where he misses 3 out of 4 last hits in the first 2 waves. Now he has a support in lane. He has no observer wards. The Pudge hook is kind of inevitable to hit him there because he can't really see Pudge where he is to see the animation. But now that the creep wave is pushed, this is where Sven needs to go back and actually start pulling the creep wave or the support. Now he didn't really end up saying anything to the support here, and just watch what happens here. Pudge end up just use a mango, as a hook, and Sven can't really do anything there to save his support. This is what happens when the creep wave is pushed up, and legend players are still making this mistake. So a full creep wave later, Sven ends up caving in, cuts down a tree here, and pulls the camp. You can't see the tree being cut down because of the replay bug, but they end up catching Pudge here, and Pudge tries to contest like very poorly there into that camp. So Sven just simply pulling the creep wave ends up turning into a kill, which is really nice. Now, again here, Sven has 1 point in cleave. This ends up being pretty good to harass the enemy with for like just the very start of the game because he's up against 2 melee heroes. But pretty much he ends up not really controlling the creep wave that well, and he ends up letting the creep wave come in under his tower. So when they come under the tower here, your creep wave is just going to push again. He really needs to just sit in lane and tank these creeps and start farming them up at a further position away from the tower. So yet again here we see the creep wave pushes in just pretty soon afterwards, and the next bounty runes come along. Also it's nighttime, which changes the dynamic of this lane, and we finally have the support pulling the creeps for the first time. So as the creep wave gets into like a somewhat decent equilibrium, we look at Sven picking up his first item here, which is raindrops. Not like the smartest thing. He also bought a wand, and we end up seeing that these are kind of like weird items to be buying because they don't really help you that much surviving in lane. So right after he dies here, when he comes back to lane, he just fights a little bit, he stays in lane for a bit, and he gets 5 pretty much stick charges, but he finished off the wand, bought this recipe, kind of like a waste of gold. And this is actually how you can like make yourself farm faster, is by spending less gold essentially on things that you don't need, like a recipe for the wand. And he goes back into the jungle. Now this is pretty normal enough of what happens to Sven. The issue is that if we look at what's happening right now, the Night Stalker is just free farming the entire time. And really, it doesn't matter what's happening that much with, you know, Sven. He's just kind of ignoring the lanes and just farming. He moves over to the ancient camps. So I looked at his farming patterns. They're pretty okay. You know, they're about average of what you'd expect at this rank. You know, he does, you know, stack the ancients. He stacks the camp just when it comes up to the mark to stack it. You know, pretty straightforward stuff for anyone who knows how to farm. I don't really need to go into this in too much detail. However, what I want to note now is let's have a look at Night Stalker's items. We end up seeing that their items are incredibly similar: Power Treads and Mask of Madness, and Sven also has kind of like somewhere around the same. And if we just have a look at this graph over here of the two players, we end up seeing here is like around 6 minutes is where he bought the raindrops, and we end up seeing Night Stalker has 2k net worth, 2k net worth over here on Sven. They're both the same. Now if we accelerate on to like 10-12 minutes, you know, we see the net worth on Sven is actually lower than Night Stalker because Night Stalker got some kills. But pretty much what's happening here is Night Stalker has got a safe lane in the off lane. He has free farmed with a support pudge. Think of that. You've pretty much now got 2 carries on the enemy team at both side lanes. And this is what's happened by Sven completely abandoning the lane. And when you have a wand going jungle, it's kind of like confusing why you would even buy the wand or even a stick by itself when you abandon the lane so quickly. So these items were not that smart. Now, as he goes on, he really just farms for the vast majority of the time. We can watch this at fast speed, and pretty much the only thing he does good here is when his team are fighting, he ends up while using his ultimate to push down this mid tower, which does make some impact in the game. But aside from that, he really doesn't join any fights until he finishes his next item. So now we have Sven with his Aghanims. He's silenced here. He moves into position where the silencer is, goes on silencer straight away, ends up bursting him down pretty easy with the Mask of Madness attack speed. And now the Ray King is caught here out of position, and Sven goes on him as well. And pretty much, you know, Sven didn't even contribute anything other than just killing the silencer. A simple little pick off and a support. He's not really making a huge impact in the game. He goes for a smoke of the seat, finds the Medusa, which is pretty nice. They end up getting an arrow here. He turns around away from Medusa's ult. Very understanding of the mechanics in the game. However, this Medusa is actually quite tanky. She has a lot of items as well. She's a Scaddy finished. And the reason why is because she's pretty much playing similar to Sven, farming for pretty much the entire game for like 20 minutes before she even gets active. And really this Medusa is involuntarily getting active. The Sven is kind of like pressuring her to fight. So we see Sven as his ultimate off cooldown, and he doesn't really have much intention to go and get fights at this point. His idea right now is just to farm up a BKB, and really he's even scared to use his ultimate while farming in case he won't have it for a team fight. You know, an okay consideration here, but generally, you know, even when he has the BKB ready, now he's not going fighting because his support is dead. He goes back jungling, and we end up seeing the pacing of his decision to go fighting is really off. He showcases his BKB to the enemy team by farming that's like lane at the side, and still the BKB is there. All 5 heroes are alive, and no one is intending in fighting. They're sitting back. Now this is understandable when it's Night Stalker at nighttime, but we end up seeing Sven just kind of positions himself so far away from his teammates, and his teammate gets caught in mid lane. Now this is where Sven has the intention of going in. He has BKB here, but he's pretty late to wait here, and then eventually goes in after Axe goes in. So kind of like he should have gone in probably a little bit earlier here, but then he ends up chasing pretty hard onto this Medusa. He does have clumsy net ready. He doesn't end up using it, and pretty much here he gets, you know, silenced by the Night Stalker, and he's committed such a far position at this point. He's just going to get right click down, And he even tries to escape here with the stun, which is a really nice little understanding of how the mechanics of his stun work. But really the positions were wrong before the team fight happened, and also during the team fight by the end when he was dying. So to be fair, the Sven's team is not that great. He goes on to Night Stalker here. There's a BKB comes out. The Sven is like trying to run away here, and they're not really shouldn't really be taking this team fight. And the monkey just TP'd back there and died instantly. Now he goes trying Night Stalker, and Pudge can counter these like BKB heroes very easily with his ult, so you want to keep away from the Pudge. But as well, if we look at the minimap, it's always dark. It's very hard for Sven to play this game just because his support kind of sucks, to be honest with you, and has a lot of ways to improve. And a lot of like Sven's team is really playing under par in comparison to the enemy team. Now we end up seeing like the past two fights, the biggest issue there was Night Stalker with just Sven's interactions with fighting. He couldn't really kill the Night Stalker that easily. And we end up seeing Night Stalker again is causing like big issues not only for Sven but the rest of his team. And a lot of this is due to the fact that you just gave Night Stalker an entirely free lane at the very start, and Sven has to back off from this Roshan fight. You end up seeing that like Night Stalker's able to out right click this Sven. It's hilarious, and they pretty much just end up losing off of this. The enemy just push mid and Sven has no buyback, and this is why you don't want to really abandon your lane entirely, and if you are farming the jungle, to still try and commit to the lane as much as possible. Because offlaners can get out of control, especially once you start reaching the legend bracket. Now we're looking at an Immortal rank 11 Sven, and this time he's up against Viper and Tiny in lane. The Viper immediately ends up like pushing the creep wave into his tower. This makes it much harder for Sven to last. If we notice his starting items, he has 3 tangos, and really he'd probably end up buying a salve if he needs it later. This is unusually low amount of regen in the lane, and we also have a notice Tiny is cutting the creep wave here, which again turns around the exact same thing for the second creep wave, which Sven has to last hit under his tower. Now after the second creep wave comes, it ends up, guess what, returning back to exactly where Sven wants it. This is ideally where you want to be. And we'll also notice that he hasn't skilled any spells. The reason why is because he may not want to be able to push the creep wave that quickly, so he's holding out on using cleave so early. As well as this, he generally has an easier time up against something like this lane, because he has Omni Knight on his team, and pretty much gets a kill on Viper here. Yes, the enemy get like first blood, but really you're swapping gold here for Sven to get even bigger, and the Viper is not that much of an issue. Now he does end up also buying a wand similar to what we saw in the legend game, and he flies out on the courier. So if we look at why can Sven go into the lane with just 3 tangos, it's because Omni Knight gave him a salve. This is quite common for supports to give a salve to their carry, but also he's forcing himself not to get harassed too much. He's pulling the creep wave back at like 1 creep at a time, and he actually just pushes the creep wave out pretty quickly here as well. And instantly after he does this, he goes back and stacks this camp and pulls it at the same time. Now this is pretty good. He also cut down the trees there with Quelling Blade in previously to this. Now this might seem kind of stupid initially because Viper is getting all of this farm. Now Omni Knight is leeching into a lot of this farm as well, but we end up seeing the second creep wave straight after this. The creep wave is going to reset back to the position where Sven wants it. So this is a very good reset of your creep wave equilibrium, and it's something definitely you could use in your own games if you're not already doing it. Sven's after picking up a Morbid Mask here, and the Viper just trying to harass him down. The Omni Knight does die here when the Tiny goes in. This is actually kind of like okay. It's not like perfect, but at least Omni Knight dies rather than Sven dying, because Sven can keep farming and doing what he wants. And we end up noticing Sven pulls the creeps back under his own tower, just so that he doesn't have to last hit near Viper, and kind of also away from Tiny, so that he can't get like a good toss on him. You also notice that he rotates into the jungle, but instead of just rotating like how you see the legend player do it, he's trying to kill the camps close to his lane, the large camp and small camp. And you also see straight away he pushes the lane rather than just sitting in the lane and last hitting one at a time, and rotates back to the small camp. Even gets this big camp as well. He stacks the big camp and farms the big camp again. Now what you would expect from going on at the same time was Viper to free farm, and probably when Viper saw Sven leave, he pushes the creep wave as fast as he can, trying to get some tower damage down and dive the tower onto the support. But Sven comes back to the lane right on time and gets his really simple pickup onto Viper, a nice little kill, but he's also straight back farming creeps. His intention is to rotate into the jungle, back to the lane, and do that as efficiently as possible. Now once he's done a little bit of this, he ends up getting Empower from the Magnus and can farm this big camp that someone else has. So these are more common stuff that you will see in Immortal, maybe like Divine matches as well. Maybe not as efficient as this in Divine, but you'll see this sort of thing happening where stacks will be more common. If we look at just the level advantage here, the Sven has his level 9 and Undying is level 4. So this is a position 5 support. Kind of common that we would die here. He did cut down like that Quelling Blade with the tree at the start, which was pretty nice. And he also gets kind of escape here using the Quelling Blade, cutting down trees. So, he's actively using this Quelling Blade other than just, it's there to... He's using the active, let's put it that way. And a lot of Legend players probably won't ever use the active. He's even using the active to get to, like, creep camps that little bit faster. So, we end up seeing, the farm, the movement, much better than what we're seeing in Legend anyways. So now we have a fight here, kind of a weird fight with the enemy team diving really hard for the Sven. He backs off back under his own tower. Very good positioning here, and the enemy does not have as good positioning, and they're diving under the tier 1. Sven's team is really good, obviously, because they're Immortal players, and this is like an unfair comparison to compare like Sven's teammates. They're vastly better than what we saw in the last Sven match in Legend. So we end up seeing a play here that's quite similar to the Legend match. Sven's team is taking a fight, and he ends up using this space being created to push down this tower by himself. Now, this fight ends up going on for quite a long time. The Tiny and Undying are dead, and the Sven decides to rotate to come and join this fight. And really what the Sven does is he just moves in, he goes on Viper. He doesn't actually have much damage, because really the disruption from Shadow Demon can just keep disengaging the fights, but the rest of Sven's team has tons of damage. So really all Sven is doing is just being that extra hero that everyone's running away from, because he can just get those Echo Saber double clicks onto you. And really this is a much better item. If you look at most heroes, or like most top players who are playing Sven, very rarely do they ever skip Echo Saber like what we saw the Legend player do. And the reason why is because why would you want to be able to jump on someone with Aghanims if you can't burst them down? The Echo Saber massively increases your damage, and it couples so well with God's Strength. It's really the big reason why this item is picked up, and often you even see players in the later parts of the game will opt to keep their Echo Saber out, even in their like top 6 items that they'll have equipped when they have 7 items available. So, really here what you're seeing is Sven getting very far ahead. We end up seeing like the net worth, he's like 2k net worth ahead of Luna, and hero level he's level 13. Again, the Radiant is looking like they're getting a small experience advantage over the Dire side. So here's an example of why you also want to be picking up Echo Saber. He uses Quelling Blade here to cut down the tree and go in on Tiny, but you end up seeing Tiny has no chance to even use one spell. So pretty much the Sven can burst them down in the same duration that his stun exists. So this is like why you want to be picking up Echo Saber before you even think about getting an Aghanims. So we have a team fight breaking out here on mid lane, and Sven decides to teleport in. Now he's got a Sanjin Yasha, so notice how his movement speed is much faster here. When he stuns, he can literally just run into the enemy and burst them down, and they can't run away. And even if the enemies keep fighting there, they're gonna die. And one of the reasons why he builds this is, one is, why would you not build Aghanims? Well, the reason why is because Shadow Demon can very easily disengage a Sven stun with Aghanims. Just a disruption will interrupt that whole combo. So really the Sanjin Yasha works very well against Tiny, and also just general status resist. He's stacking status resist with Omni Knight, and this ends up like being very hard to play into really with any carry. As well as that, Luna has very high base movement speed as a hero, and Sven needs to be able to run and chase after her as well, and the Sanjin Yasha helps that work like much easier. So Sven and Tiny are kind of just like, Sven's just ignoring this Tiny because he's only level 7, and the Dire mess up their spells and how they're comboing them together. And really you see Sven has so much burst damage and can really easily kill down anyone who he right clicks. And now Luna, who's pretty much the strongest hero on the Dire side, the Sven can burst her like pretty easily. And the Shadow Demon tries to save the Luna here just before she dies. And Luna almost gets away here. But the Sven, because he has Mask of Madness, movement speed, and also Sanchin Yasha, he can very easily chase down this Luna. Now we have Tiny after buying back here, trying to burst down and get the kill on Sven, but the Echo Saber bursts him down here. And now Shadow Demon's in trouble too. Pretty much they still have RP and they can use this, and pretty easy. Like Sven could easily got a rampage there if they all just lined up together, but they didn't. And really what we end up seeing after this is that the game is actually over at this point, because Sven just goes in, takes Roshan by himself, and the Dire side is just AFK in their fountain. This is the reason why, is actually because there's such a big level disparity. Shadow Demon actually has somewhat of a decent level, but the level 10 offlaner Viper is basically nothing. Like Sven has double the experience or levels that Viper has. So hopefully you enjoyed this video and you like to see the difference between the different ranks. And if you want to see more Dota content like this, make sure you subscribe.